What up, Hype Squad? It's your boy Lucrecio coming at you with another video. And if you're new to the page, welcome to Exceed the Hype. To join the Hype Squad, all you gotta do is click the subscribe button. Alright, so we're approaching the quarter of this NBA season. If you remember, I had the video in the summer when we were talking about San Antonio having the answer to Golden State's riddle. Well, the quarter of a season is about done. So we're gonna go ahead and do an update to see how that's going for the San Antonio Spurs. It's gonna be a 30 video series just like the one in the summer. Every team will be covered, but today's team is the San Antonio Spurs. All right, how are the Spurs looking? About 20 or so games in. So the Spurs right now are exactly 10-6. So even though they don't have their best player, they're missing their best player, and he's also a top 5 player in the league, top 3, just depending on how you look at it. But most NBA fans would rank Kawhi Leonard somewhere between 3 and 5. All right, and some people might even say between 2 and 5. But if we want to cover the majority of people, I say between 3 and 5. So they're missing Kawhi Leonard, their best player, a top player in the league. They still are 10-6 currently. All right, and which is good for the number 4 seed in the Western Conference, which in my opinion, I feel like they're hanging in there pretty well. Why are they hanging in there pretty well? Well, it's obviously because LaMarcus Aldridge is leading them like a champion. Nah, he's not a champion yet, but he's leading them like a champion, right? He's holding the fort down with 22 points, 22.3 points per game, and about 8.4 rebounds per game. So we all heard the noise last season and into the summer about LaMarcus Aldridge complaining about not, being the focal point of the offense and only being used to protect the rim and get rebounds and things of that nature. It was beginning to look like when he signed that extension that he had made peace with that role or whatever and was going to move forward with Popovich and this team as currently constituted. Well, things kind of changed around with Kawhi Leonard not being ready with the quad injury, not being ready to begin the season. The Spurs ended up having to depend on Mr. LaMarcus Aldridge more than they had bargained for, and he's coming through for them. 22 points and 8 rebounds is not anything to scoff at, especially when your main guy is down. So LaMarcus Aldridge is holding down the fort for the San Antonio Spurs. All right, they're 10-6 and they're the 4th in the West. Well, let's talk about what possibly could be going wrong for the Spurs, though, or what may pose an issue in the future. And in my personal opinion, at this point guard play is going to be a big downfalling of the San Antonio Spurs. Now, Tony Parker, who's obviously pretty old at this point, understanding that his game was highly dependent on his athleticism. He's a super fast. He can cut through the defense like a knife and a hot knife into butter or whatever, and get to the basket whenever he wanted to. Now, naturally, as he gets older, that speed and that quickness or whatever starts to come back some, right? So he's not gonna be able to get to the basket like how he used to be. He's gonna have to depend on other stuff. I'm not so sure that transition is gonna be as kind to Tony Parker as it has been to some of the other basketball stars. So with that being the case, the San Antonio Spurs really need to grow a new point guard. They either need to trade for a point guard that's already established, that's still young but already established, or they have to grow one. Now, they have a young point guard who they're very interested in, who's about 6'5", who they are expecting big things out of. However, he's just not there yet in DeJounte Murray. At times, he shows signs of being a good playmaker. He shows signs of being a good passer. He can hit threes sometimes or whatever, and he has an ability to score, to get to the second level of that defense and, score, whether it's at the basket or whether it's about 5 feet away from the basket with a floater or whatever the case may be. He's shown signs of being a good scorer. He's just inconsistent, and that's to be expected because he's a young player. He's a very young player. But the Spurs are going to need him to grow or at least start the process of growing into what he's going to grow into pretty fast, because right now their leading assist man is Paul Gasol with 3.8 assists, and LaMarcus Aldridge averages about 3 assists as well. So their big men are the ones doing the bulk of the playmaking, and I don't know how long they can sustain that. So their guard play is going to be a big factor for them. Also, their offensive production right now, as I said before, LaMarcus Aldridge is scoring 22 points per game. But who else is helping shoulder the burden of the Spurs scoring? Well, I'll tell you who else. It's Rudy Gay, who's averaging 11.8 points. He is the second leading scorer on this team. On a 10-6 team, Rudy Gay is the second leading scorer on this team with 11.8 points per game. And the third leading scorer is also getting 11, and that's Danny Green. Now, obviously, a lot of this stuff is going to be cured when Kawhi Leonard comes back, because he's easy 25 points per game. But until he comes back, you know, it is amazing that they are able to still win games and still, you know, be a dominant team in the Western Conference with, you know, that type of production coming from, you know, their second and third. When your second and third leading scorer, Rudy Gay and Danny Green, scoring 11 points apiece or whatever, that's gonna be a tough situation to get over. So those are also problems. They will need more offensive firepower to really be able to compete in the Western Conference. They really also need DeJounte Murray to step it up quick. We saw last year, Jonathan Simmons grow leaps and bounds during the season last year. Now, I don't know what Popovich was doing, and it could also just be that Jonathan Simmons was better than advertised, even though he was a D-League player or whatever. He probably should have been in the NBA years ago. All right, so that could just be the case. It could just be a situation where Popovich gave him an opportunity, and in given the opportunity, he just experienced some games and he just got better, right? But ultimately, the Spurs will need DeJounte Murray to have a similar type growth process this season. They need him to be able to shore up that point guard position going forward. The Spurs also really need, you know, to get healthy. Kawhi Leonard and his quad injury, he needs to be able to recover from that so he can get back in the court, get back in the swing of things, get his timing back, and get all that stuff together. And then they need to get Tony Parker back going strong. Now, at this point in his career, I don't know what they're going to really get out of Tony Parker at this point in his career, but whatever that is, they need to figure out what that is that they're going to be able to get out of Tony Parker and then start to get it, basically, right? And Tony Parker's still a very smart basketball player. He can still shoot. I still believe he could use his craftiness to still be able to get to the basket almost at will. It just won't be what we saw in the past. But I still do believe Tony Parker will be a very useful player going forward. So there's also that. So they really need to get their health together, and they need DeJounte Murray to really start to mature and grow into the player that he will be in the NBA. Ultimately, I do like what I've seen from the Spurs in this first quarter of the season. They have performed very strong. They have been overcoming a lot of adversity so far this season, and I absolutely I really like what I've seen from the Spurs. Popovich is still proven over and over that he's probably the best coach ever in the NBA, and they do have a bit of news. I don't know how you San Antonio Spurs are going to feel about this, but there is a certain guy in Cleveland who becomes a free agent at the end of this year. And a lot of people don't believe this, but I'm one of those people who believe it is a very good chance. If you think if he's worried about winning at this point in his career, which is going towards the end of his career, if he's really, really overcome with trying to win, and especially if the Golden State Warriors were to somehow win this championship again this year, while most people are talking about the Los Angeles Lakers being the team that he may decide to go to if he chose to leave the Cleveland area, I don't subscribe to that belief. I don't really believe that because it doesn't really make sense for winning. There's a lot of young players. Brandon Ingram doesn't even look that good in my opinion. Lonzo Ball has not looked good so far this year. Kyle Kuzma looks good. They depend on Robin Lopez or Brook Lopez for a lot of their offense from the three-point line, which is ridiculous in my opinion. Like, there is so much wrong with LA. I think that guy might end up going to San Antonio. Especially, it just makes perfect sense. If he seeks to be coached by a player with more, I guess, clout or whatever, I couldn't think of a better word to say in that situation, or more experience, or, you know, who has a higher reputation for winning than himself, Popovich is kind of the only guy left in the NBA who fits that category. Or like a Phil Jackson, but Phil Jackson is not a coach anymore, and he also isn't in the NBA anymore. And LeBron also doesn't even like Phil Jackson. Like, personally, they got personal issues. So you know that's out of the question, right? Popovich is the only guy who's kind of qualified to coach LeBron James at this point in LeBron James' career, accomplishing the things that LeBron has accomplished. Popovich is the only guy who could coach him, who he would probably be able to listen to without questioning. It also provides him a chance to play with like somebody who's on like one of the few people in the NBA who are like close to his level. And if DeJounte Murray was able to mature a little bit into the player that I think he can be, it would provide an extremely tough matchup for teams to go against in the future, especially in this positionless basketball age, because we'd be dealing with, because remember, it'll be a free agent situation, so you're not giving up anybody. They'd be dealing with LaMarcus Aldridge. LeBron probably will move over to the power forward to play with Kawhi Leonard, who then would be accompanied at the 2 by Danny Green and DeJounte Murray. 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", 6'9", and 6'11". What small ball lineup can beat that lineup? And all that is a team coached by Greg Popovich. I'm just throwing it out there. Who's to say that could happen? I don't know if San Antonio fans would even want that, but I'm just saying it's possible. Anyway, San Antonio hanging in there without the Klaw. Hanging in there strong, all right? Leave your comments on the video. Do you agree with my assessment of San Antonio 16 games into the season? Do you disagree? Leave it all below. What do you think about DeJounte Murray? What do you think about LaMarcus Aldridge? What do you think about Kawhi Leonard? What do you think? Leave it below. If you enjoyed this content, as always, go ahead and leave a like, a thumbs up. And as always, to join the Hype Squad, all you got to do is click the subscribe button. All right, see you next time.